They say the oldest child always grows up first, but what they never tell you is how lonely it feels to be the first to realize you've been placed on the back burner. That realization doesn't come with fireworks or a dramatic outburst. No, it comes quietly, like a slow leak in your chest that never gets patched. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. I remember the exact moment I realized I was nothing more than a placeholder in my own family. It was last Thursday, a rainy, gray-skied Thursday that felt more like a memory than a real day, the kind where time crawls and everything smells like wet pavement. I came home exhausted from working a 9-hour shift at the local bookstore, my hands stained with ink and my feet aching from being on them all day. I was hoping, just hoping, for something warm waiting for me on the table. Something freshly cooked, something that said, "We thought of you." Instead, I walked into the kitchen to find a plate covered in plastic wrap, cold mashed potatoes and dried up green beans. On the counter, a yellow Post-it note with my name in hastily scribbled handwriting. "Heat this up. There's pasta in the fridge, too." That pasta had been made 4 days ago. I knew because I made it. I looked around and noticed the dining table was empty, but 2 wine glasses were drying beside the sink. Plates I hadn't seen before were already rinsed and stacked. There was a fresh smell in the air, rosemary, garlic, something rich and buttery, and my stomach twisted not just from hunger, but from something deeper, shame. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I still expected more. Still hoped they'd treat me like someone who mattered. I heard laughter from upstairs. My mother's voice was light and joyful, followed by my father's warm, deep chuckle. I tiptoed closer to listen. Mia, my younger sister, was on speakerphone. "You should have seen the place," she was saying. "Orel is unreal. The plates are art, not food. I had this lobster tail that melted in my mouth. Oh, and the dessert? Gold flakes." I swear my mother gasped with delight. "My baby deserves nothing but the best. You've been working so hard for those midterms." Hard? Mia had failed her last 2 classes and spent most of her days lounging around in oversized hoodies watching TikToks. I was the one working 2 jobs while attending online courses I paid for myself. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, listening to how proud they were of her for showing up at a restaurant they paid for while I was reheating leftovers alone. This wasn't the first time. Mia has always been their golden child, the chosen one, the one who got private dance lessons, birthday parties with ponies, and spontaneous weekend getaways just because. I got budget sneakers from department store clearance racks and birthday cards that still had the price stickers on them. My wins were quiet. My failures were loud. Mia's wins were celebrated. Her failures were forgiven before they even landed. I once asked them why. Why the difference? Why the favoritism? I was 15 when I gathered the courage, heart pounding, trying to keep my voice from cracking. My mom didn't even look up from her phone. "You're older," she said simply. "We expect more from you." It didn't matter that I never gave them trouble, that I never snuck out, never got suspended, never even got a C. It didn't matter that I cleaned the house when they were tired or covered for Mia when she skipped school. I was the responsible one. The easy child, which, in their language, meant the invisible one. I sat at the kitchen table that night, fork scraping against the side of a chipped plate as I forced down cold noodles, alone. I tried not to cry, not because crying felt weak, but because I knew no one would notice. I had cried before, and they never asked why. I had shouted once, and they told me I was being dramatic. I had even stopped eating altogether for a week just to see if they would react. They didn't. The most painful kind of rejection isn't when someone tells you you're not wanted, it's when they act like you're not even there. After dinner, I cleaned up like I always did. I washed their wine glasses, dried their fancy plates, and tucked away the bottle of white wine they had saved for a special night. I paused before placing the cork back in, wondering what it would take for me to be considered special. I passed by the living room and saw my parents smiling at Mia's photos on Instagram, her arms around a perfectly plated entree, her caption filled with hashtags like "star, fine dining, and all's deserved." My mother read it out loud with pride. "Look how beautiful she looks." I could barely remember the last time she looked at me like that. Maybe never. Back in my room, I sat cross-legged on the bed, the dim glow of my laptop screen illuminating the half-filled scholarship application I hadn't submitted. What was the point? Even if I won, no one would celebrate. No one would notice. The applause was always reserved for Mia. And then something in me broke. But not in a way that made me fall apart. It was the kind of break that finally makes space for clarity to slip in. I wasn't going to beg for love anymore. I wasn't going to wait at a dinner table for scraps of attention. I wasn't going to keep proving my worth to people who refused to see it. They had given Mia everything on a silver platter, and one day they'd realize she never learned how to hold it without dropping it. But me? I had learned how to serve myself. That night, I pulled out the suitcase I had hidden under my bed. I had kept it packed for months, always hesitating to leave, always clinging to hope that something might change. But that hope had finally run out. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a quiet, decisive moment, with cold pasta in my stomach and a full heart ready to stop settling. And as I zipped that suitcase, one thought echoed in my mind. Not with anger, but with cold, clear certainty. They'll regret what they did. The next morning, I didn't wait for another confrontation. No goodbyes, no explanation. Just me, my small suitcase, and a quiet goodbye whispered to the house that had never truly felt like home. I caught the earliest bus out of town and went to stay with my friend Jess, whose family had always treated me with more warmth than my own. Her mother made us tea, her father asked how I'd been, and I sat there wondering how something so simple could feel so foreign. Living with Jess was like breathing fresh air after years of suffocation. We'd stay up late with blankets wrapped around us, talking about life, trauma, and dreams we'd never dared to say aloud. She didn't just listen, she heard me. And I realized then that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up for you without being asked. To make ends meet, I picked up part-time jobs and enrolled back into community college using saved-up scholarship money I had almost forgotten about. I worked at a bookstore during the day and studied at night. It was hard. There were days I came home with blisters on my feet, exhausted and nearly broke. But I felt alive. Every little win was mine alone. When I got my first A in a course I thought I'd fail, I didn't have a crowd cheering me on. I had my own heartbeat and the quiet thrill of self-worth. Time passed. Mia kept posting pictures from spa days, luxury hotels, and dinners with wine glasses tilted just right for the camera. I stopped checking after a while. The less I saw, the freer I felt. My parents never reached out, not even on my birthday. And strangely, that hurt less than I expected. Because by then, I had stopped expecting anything from them. Then, one evening, months later, my phone rang. It was my dad. I stared at the screen, unsure if I wanted to answer. Part of me felt like I owed them nothing. But something, curiosity maybe, made me press accept. He sounded different, hesitant. "Hey, how have you been?" "Fine," I replied, guarded. There was a pause. Then he sighed. "We haven't heard from you." "You didn't try," I said calmly. He admitted something I never thought he would. "We didn't know how to. Mia's been having a rough time, lost her job, failed more classes. She's been angry. And today she said something about you, said you were always the strong one, the one we leaned on too much, and that we never said thank you." His words lingered like a song in a long-forgotten language. Apologies, maybe. Regret. Definitely. But healing? That part was mine to own. "We miss you," he added. "You miss the person who took care of everything," I replied. "But you never saw me. Not really." He went quiet. Then, "We want to do better. We didn't realize what we were doing. And I'm sorry." For the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just breathed. Because I had spent so long waiting for those words. But now that they'd come, I realized I had already healed the parts they broke. I told him maybe, someday, we could talk. Maybe, when they were ready to listen without comparing, without dismissing. When they could see me not as the sister of their golden child, but as someone who carved her own path out of the ruins they left behind. Later that night, Jess and I sat on the roof drinking warm cider and staring at the stars. She looked at me and said, "You've changed." "I had to," I whispered, "or I would have stayed invisible forever." The girl who once ate cold leftovers while her sister dined in luxury didn't vanish. She transformed. She learned how to feast on self-worth, courage, and peace. She built a life that no one handed her, and in doing so, made it impossible to ever be ignored again. Let them regret what they did. That's their journey. As for me, I'm finally living mine.